welcome to the BuiltOnAir podcast, the variety show for all things Airtable. Each episode, we cover 4 different segments. It's always fresh and different and lots of fun while you get the insider info on all things Airtable. Our hosts and guests are some of the most senior experts in the Airtable community. Join us live each week on our YouTube channel every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern and join our active community at BuiltOnAir.com/join. Before we begin, a word from our sponsor, OnToAir.com. Any business running on Airtable gets the value that Airtable has, but also needs a few more functions to complete their operations. That's where OnToAir comes in. It's a suite of tools for any business running on Airtable to maximize your operations efficiencies and automations. One customer, John, states that OnToAir enables his business to function properly without having to think about building their own software, and that is pretty invaluable. The OnToAir Airtable apps are amazing, and we use them often and are very happy with the results. So join John and hundreds more customers and take your Airtable to the next level with OnToAir. Sign up today with promo code BuiltOnAir for a 10% discount. Check them out at OnToAir.com. And now let's check out today's episode and see what we built on air. All right, welcome everyone to the BuiltOnAir podcast. This is season 8, episode number 2, and we are excited to have you. We are live on YouTube, and welcome to anyone joining us, either live or watching this later. My name is Dan Fellers. I am one of the hosts of the podcast and founder of Openside. We also run OnToAir suite of products and also are the core founding company behind the BuiltOnAir community, and we are glad to have you. On today's show, we have with us Camille back again. Welcome, Camille.
Hello.
And we also have Hannah, also a new host with us.
Hello.
Camille and Hannah, why don't you both do a quick introduction?
Hi, everyone. I'm Camille. I've been a host for BuiltOnAir for quite a while, and I'm excited to be back for episode 2.
Yeah, I am Hannah Wigginton, and I do marketing and writing, and I'm kind of an Airtable fanatic, so I am excited to be here.
All right, we're glad to have you both with us again. And Allie was on last week's show, and she may be on future shows, but we're going to always kind of try to get some new faces on here and meet new people, so it's good to have both of our hosts with us today. So for today's show, we're gonna, as a summary of what we do on this show, we do a couple different segments where we walk through different things and kind of a variety show. I describe it as kind of the Tonight Show for Airtable. And so you'll see lots of different types of segments that we'll be doing. We always kick it off. Our first segment, which is what we call Round the Bases. And what we'll be doing is kind of going through and seeing what's going on with the Airtable communities that are around there, get you some exposure to different discussions of what's going on. And you can feel free to dig in deeper into these communities. So with that, we will see what's going on. We always like to start with Airtable's community site and see what people are talking about there. I don't know if either of you have discussions that you've been involved with in the community. The one thing I was going to point out, usually it seems like Airtable at the end of the month is now doing kind of a monthly recap of what they've released. And so they just released their update for April and what new features got released in April. So let's take a look here. It wasn't as big of an update as the month before. March was a really big month as far as product updates within Airtable. This month, they added some improved help. You can see in this screenshot of ways to get access to all of their help articles. So that makes it easier when you're in the app to try to get the help that you're seeking. So that's a nice added benefit. What else did they add?
I noticed, and I'm not sure if this is recent, but just adding some the templates directly into my base. They now do like a walkthrough of how to use it and kind of like tooltips to really walk you through your base and help you get set up and get started.
Yep. Yeah, I've noticed that as well. That's helpful to get started. Similar to if you've used Zapier. Zapier kind of has those templates to get started. So similar approach there. Also, looks like Android, for all the Android fans, myself included, looks like their app got better with a calendar view. So that's a nice addition for the mobile app. If you're using Box, it looks like they added a new field for their Box sync and then some permission reconnecting. So relatively small update, nothing too groundbreaking. But yeah, we'll keep you posted on new stuff that gets added. We always like to stay on top of new stuff that they're added. Any other conversations happening on the Airtable community?
From my perspective, they've been kind of standard, and I am going to be covering one kind of theme of conversation that I've noticed on the community forums recently.
Yeah, I think it was relatively standard week. We won't go into all the different just general questions. I don't think there was too many heated topics or anything. It's always interesting when you see like a really old comment like this, and then people are still
Yeah.
So here's a nice one. So yeah, if they could put inline images into the rich text field, they're moving first thing in the morning to Airtable. So that's a showstopper for this person apparently. Yeah, so mostly just general support going on.
There was a brief, I believe, API outage recently, and I think there were a few people asking about that, but it seemed like it was recovered in, less than half an hour. So I don't think it was major.
Yeah, one place to go. Airtable's support on their API outages is maybe not the best. This company, Sync Inc., keeps track of the API outages. And it was interesting though, they actually didn't capture the one from yesterday, but there definitely was an outage for about 10 minutes. And so I guess it didn't show up on their radar, but definitely was, you can kind of see there was some hiccups that they noticed, but not complete outages. So, all right, why don't we move on? In the BuiltOnAir community, so BuiltOnAir, BuiltOnAir.com, we track everything that's going on. You can see roundups. We actually summarize some of the discussions that are going on. So you can check that out on here. You can get our podcasts and previous podcasts with everything. And so there's a lot of great content on there. And then we also have a Slack community. And if you join our Slack community, BuiltOnAir.com/join, and join our Slack community. We're approaching 800 people, actually maybe closer to 1,000. So a lot of people going on in there. There's people helping each other. It's a great way to get, kind of more instant access. There's people live in there helping. You see, here's somebody asking about linked records and how to deal with the commas and whatnot. And so great resources on and then Hannah's getting involved there. So good.
Yeah, I have to keep track of all the little tips and tricks that you can do in Airtable. There's so many, and I read about them and then I forget them months later, and then I go, I know that's out there. And so just to put it all together.
Yeah. Maybe we should have kind of a community table that everybody could put new tips in.
Mm-hmm.
I like that idea.
We could do that. Here's an interesting one somebody just posted this morning, Russell, about, page designer. That seems to come up a lot of, love-hate relationship with page designer. Like, it's pretty good for a lot of things, but when it breaks, it's kind of a showstopper. So he's looking for a third-party resource that has some of the functionality of Page Designer. And there are resources out there for creating like PDFs and documents off of a record, but he's looking for kind of more of an interactive way to navigate through them, like you can see in Page Designer. But my understanding is most of the third-party tools that are external to Airtable don't have that level of functionality. It's really more for pushing data in and generating a PDF or image or something like that.
I think that's the case. Yeah. I don't really know if they have an in Airtable component that would allow you to go previous and next record like he's asking for.
Yep. Although I gotta say, I did like Scott's response. I'm gonna have to give him a +1 for that.
Amplify can help.
He mentioned our Amplify product, which does definitely allow you to navigate. It's not a full Page Designer application, but definitely allows you to navigate and lay out your data. It's more for interacting with your data versus kind of displaying it in a layout. Although some of that is on the roadmap as well. So we're moving and supporting that in the future. So that's kind of, lots of stuff. I always like to see showcase. Looks like somebody's building. Russell's been active in our community. People always share what they're working on. I've been doing the trick. So, all right, let's move on to Reddit. I was noticing Reddit gets a little bit more technical. I think Reddit is kind of more of a technical audience. And so there's a lot of programming specific questions I've noticed in there. So if that's what you're into, then Reddit might be a good place. Although we also have in the BuiltOnAir community, there's lots of developer questions and people that know that as well. But I was going to follow up. Last week, we talked about the billing issues and the person who had a $400 bill that they weren't expecting. Apparently, Airtable refunded them fully, so they're very happy. And so that one ended on a good note. So that's good.
Yeah, I will say I have an obscene amount of Airtable credits, and every now and again I will forget to transfer them to a workspace. And so like they charge me for it. And every time I've been like, yeah, can you run that back for like an hour so I can, apply my credits? And they've done it every time. They're pretty, I haven't had a problem with that kind of request yet.
Yeah, Airtable, that's a good insider tip of Airtable is very generous in giving out credits through different means. There's some third-party sites out there. JoinSecret.com is one that you can get, although that one now you have to pay. You used to be able to, there was a way where you could get $2,000 worth of credits without paying. So I know I took advantage of that, as well as many of my clients. I think it's down to $1,000, and it's, you have to pay for their service to get that, but still
It's still, I think I got a $500 credit, back when he first started that for Airtable, but the cost for it now, I think is still around $100, which still means you can, buy a yearly and get 400 of credit. So.
Yep. Yeah, still worth it. Camille, you got yours from developer.
Yes. Yeah, as a side perk to being one of the winners of the hackathon, I forget the number, but I gamed it out. It was like 25 years worth of Airtable. Like if I used Airtable by myself, I was like, that's a lot. Seems like I have way too many credits. So yeah,
very good.
I'm swimming in Airtable credits.
That's good. Here's an interesting one. Did you respond to this, Camille?
No, I actually haven't seen it. Master calendar, what?
Airtable master calendar. So I don't think they're referring to yours. So
No.
Camille on last week's episode shared her application called Master Calendar. Mm-hmm. That's an amazing calendar app that you need to check out in the marketplace. And maybe it will solve this person's question.
It might. Just a cursory glance, it seems like they might be wanting to do different bases. So if they sync a table from each of those bases into a new base that has, kind of an overarching thing, then I think the answer would be yes. Because right now, Master Calendar can only pull from one base, but any table, any number of tables. I think they're asking for the reverse. Many bases, one or two tables each.
Yeah. We'll have to give a +1. It looks like they link to your app.
Oh, cool. See, the work has been done for me.
Good job, Camille.
Nice when other people.
I released at a good time.
Yep. So we'll give them a +1 for that. All right. So yeah, so a lot of these are technical. Building a UI on top of Google Sheets. Airtable's backend, how it's structured. This is an interesting technical discussion. There's actually an article on Medium from the Airtable dev team that talks a little bit about some of their technical background. So if you want to dive deep into the technical side of Airtable, they have a blog where the developers talk a little bit what's going on under the hood. So that's what's going on. Yeah, so a lot of you get a lot of people asking, is Airtable right for us? Of course, the answer is yes. Except
you
for
can
this
make it do whatever you want.
So it looks like they had some outdated information that was pre-automations. So interesting discussion going on there. Mm-hmm. All right, why don't we move on to Facebook? And let's see, I want to refresh because we might get a comment from Hannah. There we go. Got our post there about today's episode. And either of you been involved with this community?
I've just given it like a cursory glance. There was one again about the temporary outage, but it seems like that was resolved really quickly. So, not too much activity on that one.
Yep. Yeah, you get a lot of, questions. Pretty good help happening here. You get people asking for consulting work. So if you're doing consulting, this might be a good place to find some jobs to pick up.
Yeah, there were a few kind of universal questions, if you will. There's one about what's the best kind of interface for Airtable, and then there's another one about improving auto numbers so that they have leading zeros. And I think that one was resolved in the Facebook group this week.
Yeah. Yeah, I know there was discussion earlier in the week about not just Airtable being down, but the views having issues.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, one of my customers said it really messed them up because it was like the filters in the views weren't working correctly, and so he thought that he had lost data and was changing it, and then it came back and he had duplicates and all sorts of weird stuff going on. So hopefully that didn't impact too many people. And the other thing is that this is where they'll post the off the record, which is another live show with Ben and Chris Dancy and others, where they talk about what they're working on and any questions from their community. So that's another resource that's useful. And on YouTube, I notice looks like we've got some new video series that this is the first time I've seen them. Maybe they've done some others, but nuggets of pearls and wisdom. And it looks like these are really short, like 1 to 2 minute clips where they talk with some people that are experts. So we might need to reach out and make some friends with these people. Maybe we can cross share and have them on and vice versa. So good short videos on that. Of course, Gareth and his Gap Consulting has a weekly video that's always good to keep an eye on what he's building. He does a great job on there. If you're into drag racing, looks like there's this is from Lainey. She's been on our show, so that might be good. I didn't know she was into drag racing, so that is cool. And then our friend Ben, this is the off the record, and looks like they dove into personal health data in that episode. And then this is one of Ben's videos. Plug for Ben. He also has a training course on BuiltOnAir, training.builtonair.com. So if you're looking for more in-depth training courses, Ben's got a great one there, as well as Jen Rudd, another expert. And here's our friend Ali talking to Andy Cloak from Data Fetcher, which is an app in the marketplace. So if that looks interesting, you can watch that video and learn more about that. And that's about it for a week ago. I still need to watch this one with Howie, CEO of Airtable, and see what's up with that one. So that's still on my watch list. Hopefully this week I can get to that. So a few, definitely, it looks like about 10 videos this week. And we'll be adding ours to that list here soon. So that's kind of it on the community. Any other general discussions and things going on in Airtable world?
I think it's been kind of quiet. I think we're kind of coming down from the arc of having so many new features kind of released last month, and then we're just kind of like coasting on that, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do feel like there are more apps coming out lately. I feel like every time I open a base now and look for apps, it feels like there's a new one coming out more frequently. So that's exciting.
Interesting. Yeah. So yeah, Document. This is one of the PDF document creators. So it looks like their app is now live. So that's cool. What else is new this week? Mailtable. So sending postcards. So that's kind of cool. So if you need to send postcards, you can do that, manage it in your Airtable base. Yeah. So those seem like the new ones for this week. Always good to check out and play with them. We'll do that on occasion on this show. We'll open up a new app and see what's going on there. So cool. Well, that is roundup of rounding the bases. So with that, we're going to do what we call an OnToAir Spotlight. The main sponsor for this podcast and the BuiltOnAir community is OnToAir, ontoair.com. It's the all-in-one toolkit to run your business on Airtable. And so for this spotlight, we're going to continue on with I lost my, all right. Continue on with learning a little bit about our Amplify application. And this application is a complete editor to interact with your data inline within Airtable. So it's a whole new way of looking and editing and managing your data inside of Airtable. It's a complete editor, and you can get it through the marketplace. And in this segment, I'm going to highlight the syncing feature. If you've used this product and aren't sure why there's this circle here, what this means is it's syncing the location with your Airtable base over here on the left. So if you want to have it synced, what that means is when it's circled in like that, that means that whatever you see over on the left will also be what you're seeing on the right. And so if you have a layout over here that's associated with this table, it will change to that layout when you switch. And then if I switch tables over here, then this side also switches as well. So if I go to, I know these ones have views on them. So now I'm looking at this table, and you can see I'm on the live shows. And then if I switch here, this will stay in sync. So your application stays in sync with your base. Now there's times when I want to unsync it. What that means is now this layout stays independent of where I am over here. So if I move around over here, this side stays as it was. And then I can completely navigate the entire base and switch around to different layouts associated with each table, all within here, and it doesn't impact my location there. Why this is great is now I can go into full screen mode and use the application to navigate the entire base. And this actually has become kind of my default way of interacting with the base, where if I'm dealing on a per record basis, I just open up this app and interact with it, and no longer need to go back and forth, and I can see everything I want to see all through navigating without here. So that's what the sync is. If you click it off, if you unsync it, and then when you switch tables, the other bad thing that you'll see is so now it will actually update the side over here. Sorry, need to sync it. There we go. And you'll notice the other thing is Airtable kind of has this limitation where it actually makes room, so it shrinks your app to the sidebar again. But you can get around that by unsyncing, and then you're on your own as far as where you're located. So that's OnToAir Amplify. Check it out in the marketplace. It does a ton more. This is just one little thing that it does, and hopefully you check it out and give it a try and let us know how it's working for you. With that, we're now going to move to audience question. I'm going to hand the screen share over to Camille, who's going to lead us in this.
Okay. Hold on. Can people see my screen?
Should be able to now, yep.
Okay. So a question that I see on the community forums and on Facebook a lot are related to if you have records linked to each other and you're collecting a history of records over time. Sometimes you just want to look at the most recent record that has been linked to the main one, or any other kind of distinguishing factor. Like maybe you only want to show the active records that are linked to the original. And so I found myself kind of walking through how to do this a couple of times, and the answer is using a combination of lookup or rollup fields that have a conditional applied to it. So these are just a few of those questions that I had seen on the Airtable Community Forums that are all asking essentially the same questions, and I'm going to walk through what the solution would be. So in this example base, I have a number of invoices, and each invoice is linked to a customer. If I go to my customers table, you'll see I only have a couple, and each of these customers has multiple purchase orders that they've had. And sometimes I only want to see what is the most recent order for each customer. The way I've done that is making a rollup field that pulls in the latest order date. So it's looking at the purchase orders table, looking at the order date, and using the max values aggregation formula. So that will give me the maximum date or the latest one. Then going back to the invoice table, I have the order date table here, and I have a rollup field here that's called is the latest. This is using a slightly more complicated aggregation formula. It's doing array compact, so it's getting all of the latest order dates from the customer. And then it's wrapped inside of an if statement asking if that maximum date is the same as the order date for that particular record, enter yes, and if not, enter no. That's also another kind of neat trick for a rollup field. It's not advertised, and it's not exactly easy, but you can write any formula that you can write in a formula field within the body of a rollup field, and that I use that quite often. So it saves you from having a rollup field and a formula field. You can combine them together. So again, this is asking, is this date here the same as the maximum date for that customer? If yes, then type yes. So back in the customers table, there is another field. Now it's a lookup. You could do it with a rollup as well. It has the conditional applied. So only pull in the invoice number if the is latest is yes. And that's how I was able to get, order number 18 is the most recent order for Bruce Wayne. Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Very useful. And yeah, there's lots of tricks that the more you play with the roll-up fields and that insider tip that Camille shared of being able to write formulas. Does get tricky because it doesn't give you a lot of feedback. It doesn't.
Yeah.
I don't believe it has autocomplete. Where
it doesn't. It
right.
Actually, it doesn't want you to put a formula in there. In a formula field, when you're typing the formula, it will autocomplete the names of the fields in the current table that you're working on. In a roll-up field, you can still reference the other fields in that table. It's just not going to autocomplete for you. And the drop down that kind of autocompletes the formula functions are tailored to the array functions for rollups. It's not going to show if, for instance. But you can do it if you're comfortable writing formulas. I would suggest giving it a try, and if not, then just use two fields.
Yeah.
That's a cool tip. I've seen that as an option, but I've never really tried it. So definitely going to have to see what I could do with that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it gets a little tricky to keep things straight of what exactly is going on, but definitely allows for advanced setups like that and comes in handy.
Yeah, and things like this, I like to do it just because the only field I want is this one, right? But I've had to add, this field first and then the other one here. And so if I didn't combine the formula in here, I would have another field, in order to complete this journey that we're on. And so something to keep in mind, sometimes in Airtable, you need to make more than one utility field. And if you can cut that number down, sometimes it's beneficial. So
yeah. Yet another field is.
Yeah. But it can be done. It's just, and it's, Conditional rollups and conditional lookups and conditional counts have been in place for a little bit now. And before they were in place, this would have been really complex and difficult to do. And now it's, not exactly difficult to do. You just have to remember that you need, at least one utility field in both tables that you're looking at.
Yeah, very true. Great. Thank you, Camille.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We're going to switch back here. Our next segment is Automate Create and how to use automations within your Airtable base. And I'm going to lead the discussion on that. So this is a part 2 in our series. If you remember back, if you watched the first episode, if not, I'll give a quick summary of what we have going on here. So our goal is to be able to send data from one base to another. If you're doing anything with multiple bases, it's useful sometimes to send data from one base to another. Now, the easiest way and the way I would recommend, if it works, is using the new Airtable sync functionality to sync a view from one base to another. The disadvantage of that, where sometimes it may not work for you, is if you need to be able to edit the data in both bases, because a sync is a one-way sync, and in the destination base, you can't edit the data. You can only edit it from the source base that you're in. So if you have a slightly more advanced setup, this is a quick way. I'll just run through what we did last week, and we're going to continue that today. So we set up an automation that runs on the source, and it simply runs whenever we check a box saying we want to sync this or send it over to the other one. And then in order to send from one base to another, we had to do a little bit of a scripting code. There's not a lot of code here, but all we're doing is sending it to the webhook of another automation that's running in the other base. So Airtable recently released the ability to trigger an automation off of a URL called a webhook. And so what we did was, in the second base, our destination base, we set up a trigger using, it's still in alpha, so it's not fully live yet, but it seems to be working just fine. It will provide you a URL that you put into in the source base, so that you can send data into this destination. So every time you send to this URL, it will trigger this automation. And the tricky part from here that we talked about last week is, now that we have that data from our source and we have it in our base, what do we do with it? The default actions that Airtable provides, like the update record, they don't really have a way for performing a lookup. You have to know the record ID of the record that you want to update. They also don't have any kind of concept of, if the record doesn't exist, allow you to create it. There's no conditional like if else happening within here. So we talked about some ways that you can maybe get around that. If you know the destination record ID and can store that on the source, then you could use that and send it in your webhook. But the other approach that I think is cleaner but does require scripting knowledge is writing a script that I'll bring up here. And it would take a little bit longer to go through the actual code. Maybe we'll do this for a scripting time session. But I just kind of highlighted the steps that you would have to take. So first is you create these input variables. So any action where you're passing data into a script, you can pass in the parameters and you give it a name, and then you define where it's coming from. So we're saying it's coming from our webhook, and the body is the data that got sent to the webhook. And we just passed 2 things. So these are coming from the source. So this is the name of the record from the source, and then the record ID from the source. And so I just created 2 input variables, one for the name and one for the ID, and link them to the data coming in from the trigger, the webhook. And then you can use that information inside of your scripting code, so you can get it from this input config. So the first thing that you would need to do is you need to get a reference to the table within that base, then get all the records to the table that you're looking to update. And then you'd have to kind of loop through or go through all of those records and find the match based off of the source ID. So you would want a field on your destination table that is storing, so it'd be a text field that's storing the source ID so that we know how they're linked, would be the easiest way. You could link it based off of name, but that usually the ID is the preferred way because that doesn't change, whereas the names might change and that will mess up your matching algorithm. So once you find the match, if you find a match, then you would perform an update. If you don't find a match, then you would perform a create. So it creates a new record in that base. So that's the general concept of a script that you'd have to write. And does require a little bit of scripting knowledge, but it has the benefit of performing an update or a create if it doesn't find that match, which if you create a new record on your source, that first time that you push that data over, it's not going to find it on the destination. So kind of needs a little bit more logic than what's available in the default steps available in an automation. Any questions on that? Any thoughts?
That's an interesting way. I mean, just to be able to sync it together using the webhook is unique.
Yeah, it's I think, it's pretty great. It's kind of unfortunate that there's no if this record exists, continue. If not, then create a new record for the update record action. And the script you were describing is actually fairly simple. If you're familiar with JavaScript, you could bust a script like that out. But I know for Integromat, they have their Airtable connector. I've used before. If the record I'm looking for doesn't exist, then make one. Yeah. So it would be nice if Airtable could do that in-house as well. I know there's plenty of instances where Integromat or Zapier are still kind of the way to go, but there is, I'm glad to see that more and more you can do straight within Airtable without having to get another third-party connection.
Yep. Yeah, so they're definitely improving in that. The webhooks, I think, opens up a whole new realm of what's possible. I've used webhooks within the same base. It's not just for a cross-base communication. It's great for integrating with third-party systems that support webhooks or sending information and then getting a response back. So yeah, webhooks are really useful. Even, inside the same base, I've used webhooks to talk from one automation to another. And you can really create modular kind of automations that are repurposable, reusable in different means by using the webhook approach. So definitely check it out. With that, it's actually a good segue into our next section. We're going to do another OnToAir Spotlight. Again, sponsored by OnToAir, the all-in-one toolkit for running your business on Airtable, and the main sponsor of BuiltOnAir. And this is a big one because if you're in our community, you saw our big announcement yesterday talking about a new function, a new feature that OnToAir just launched today. Actually, emails will be going out in just a little bit after this call, but we just launched a new library of predefined functions. And so this is part of our OnToAir Actions app that originally was built inside of Zapier and is now a standalone product that runs within Zapier, or it can be used within automations or anything like that. And now with our functions, it's essentially a library of predefined tasks that are fairly common within Airtable. Everything from manipulating your arrays, finding differences within multi-select fields, dealing with attachments, creating a log history every time fields change, performing math calculations, performing finance calculations, financial formulas that if you're coming from Excel are missing in Airtable, like IRR and net present value, things like that. But also just common tasks of like setting default values within a new record or copying fields from one field to another. Maybe, one use case for a copy field might be, we talked last week about the advantages of using a linked record versus a multi-select drop-down list. And sometimes a table with a linked record is better. One of the drawbacks is it doesn't have the coloring of a multi-select. So one thing you could do is create a copy field where still use a linked record, but instantly copy that value into a multi-select field that then has the coloring so it looks nice. So things like that on the copy field. But I'm going to show real quick a trigger upsert, and what this does is essentially what we already talked about in the last automation create. So it has the ability to, every time a record in your source, if we use like that same approach, if we were to look up, I believe it was design projects. If we were to look up our sync checkbox and say every time the sync checkbox is checked, you can set up essentially a trigger within OntoAir, and then it will perform that, all that code that I shared in the scripting, it essentially performs that action as well. So you specify which base you want to send it to, and then you specify where you want to update, and then how you want to update it. So there's 4 different ways that you can perform an update. You can do an upsert, which is essentially what we just shared in the example, where it'll update if there is a match, or it'll create if there's not a match. Or you can say it'll update only, so if there's no match, it won't do anything. Or you can say create new, so if it finds a match, it won't do anything, but if it doesn't find a match, it will always create a new one. Or you can just always create a new record. So very, very advanced ways of dealing with copying data from one table to another. And again, this can be within the same base. It can be in different bases that you're copying from one to another. So anytime your data updates, you essentially just match fields. So you'd say the name field in your source has to match the CPC value in your destination. So this is considered a link, and if it matches there, then it'll perform an update. If there isn't a match here, then it'll create a new one. And then you specify all your mapping. So this is your source field. This is where it will go in the destination, and you set up all your source and destination mapping. And then how you want to deal with attachments, you could append to the end of attachment or override based off what's in your source. So a lot of great functionality. This is a very useful one to map from an update to from a source to a destination. So check out OntoAir actions and check out all of our functions. And we'll be adding more functions. If there's a must-have function that you need, let us know, and we're trying to add as many as we can, and build out our library to be the most complete library of no-code, predefined functions to perform any tasks that you need in Airtable. Next, we're going to move on to our industry view, where we're going to focus on an industry, and Hannah is going to walk us through that. So with that, Hannah, if you want to get your screen ready.
Okay.
And so this is our first time doing this segment, and we'll see what Hannah has in store for us on an industry view.
Okay, let me choose the one I need. Okay, can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, so we are going to talk about using Airtable in marketing. And when you think about marketing, there are so many different aspects, so many different categories that, encompass marketing in general. So what's great is that with Airtable, whether you're a small business, a larger company, or a team, you can use Airtable for your different categories of marketing. So I'm going to start with this one here, and this is actually the template from the Airtable template section, and this is the marketing campaign. And what's great here is you can see that, we're tracking all of our campaigns in Facebook, on Google, on Twitter, and we're able to see each one in there and know what we have out there, how it's done. We can keep track of, the response to it, what sort of numbers we have for it. And so it's a great way to keep everything together and everyone can see what's going on. So in these, you can link to each one. So if we want to look at Facebook, we can see how many campaigns we have on Facebook, whether they're live or planned or paused. And then we can see, using some roll-up fields, we use linked record fields and several different types of fields to see how much we've spent on it, how many clicks we've had on it, conversions and things like that. So this is just one way, is to track your ads. Now, when it comes to marketing, you have email marketing, traditional marketing, social media, content marketing, all these different things. And with Airtable, you can put it all in one base, or you can use multiple bases and sync them together. So if we want to have our social media calendar, we can write what we're going to talk about, what the post is going to be. We can add the image for the actual post and all the information. Now, what's great now is that in Airtable, with the automations, now you can actually send a post directly to whatever platform you want. So not only are you able to keep track of all your posts and everything that you're working on, now you can go ahead and click a checkbox and send it to Twitter. So it's really an all-in-one, able to see everything.
Yeah. Which channels do they support? So they have automations for,
oh goodness,
just maybe do the scheduled time.
Let me see.
They also have support for Hootsuite as well. So if you're already using Hootsuite.
Yeah, that's a great integration there.
Yeah.
So just natively Facebook pages, Twitter, and then Hootsuite, which can do everything else.
Right.
So it's a really great way to see everything. You can create your marketing plan in here, just kind of keep track of your KPIs, what your goals are for your entire marketing initiatives, whether that's direct mail. I mean, what's great is that really anything you can think of, you can create a base in here. And Airtable has an entire marketing section. So just to have something out of the box ready to go, you have your content calendar. This is that marketing campaign tracker that you saw. And they really have just a lot of different options. And then not only that, you can go to the Airtable universe, and these are user created templates for marketing. And really it's just so many ways to grab one of these and to get started without having to worry about your base setup. But you can immediately copy one of these into your workspace and start tracking all of your marketing. Now, what's even better is now that you have everything in Airtable, you can then connect it to Zapier. And let's say your company loves spreadsheets and they just can't see using anything else. So if you add something in Airtable, create a Zap in Zapier and send it to a spreadsheet. So, the CEO has access to the spreadsheet and can see that without even having to log into Airtable. So what's great is you can connect everything together and work with however your company needs to work, or however, who's in charge, what they want to see and what can work well for them.
Yeah. Do you also have if you go to the marketplace, maybe check out airtable.com/marketplace. And they'll have that right there, the 4 marketing teams. Yeah, so they have a collection of apps that are relevant. Although I will say they're missing Amplify and Master Calendar, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Obviously, all the ones that they put up there, to me, make sense for marketing teams. But I feel like there's, maybe a couple more that, would work just as well for marketing teams. But that's kind of the thing is with Airtable, everyone uses, everyone's Airtable is so different, which is why in addition to having the template gallery, there's the universe, and there's 1,000 different ways to make any different base. So they might be using completely different apps than I think they might.
Yeah.
Yeah. One app that's in this marketing campaign is the Charts app. So you can have a visual of your campaigns, and let's see on this one, how many they have open, or how many they have basically in each section.
Yeah. We actually, they're also missing, they don't have post to Facebook in their collection of automations. But they do have a script for, I don't think I've played with that one, importing YouTube analytics. So maybe I'll have to try that out with our live show.
That's pretty great.
Great one. Yeah. I mean, what's great is if you create your content, whether that's social media or blog posts or videos, you can add it all in here, sync it together, have everyone on the same page to know how everything is doing in there. And then I also was going to show, I actually have this article on my website of just a bunch of different examples and tutorials that I find out in the wild about Airtable. And I do have a marketing section here. So if you want to go through and read, different ways people do it, how they use their dashboards connected to Google Data Studio, how to automate your social media content using Airtable, Banner Bear, and Zapier, and then also a couple of ultimate guides from the BuiltOnAir website. So it's a great way to read how other people are using Airtable for marketing, and really the options and opportunities to use it are pretty endless.
Yeah, we've had, I've worked with several marketing clients. It's definitely a high use case of Airtable. Lots of marketing teams are using it, and they've replaced, I won't name names of where they're coming from, but there's software out there that manages, your calendar of your posts, your blog posts, your Twitter feeds and whatnot and everything, and costs thousands of dollars a month. And I've had several clients move off of that onto Airtable for much less and custom built to what they wanted. And so, Airtable is a great solution for marketing companies, because every market, like you mentioned, every marketing company does things differently, and because that's the whole point, is trying to stand out and be unique. And so if everybody was using the same software, they're kind of doing it the same way. So Airtable breaks that mold of being able to really provide your unique approach on how you do your marketing and build around your workflow.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I'll add my plug in here for BuiltOnAir. We do have industry guides as well. We have one for marketing teams, content marketing, sales and marketing. And so great resources to check out and read. E-commerce is similar. And so another great resource for anybody doing marketing. And, similar to that, the calendar, I need to go back to my clients and introduce them to Master Calendar. I think that would be ideal for some clients that I'm thinking of. So
yeah, that's a perfect use case to keep track of the dates of everything together.
Yep. Lots going on there. So great. Thank you, Hannah, with that. And so I believe that ends this week's episode. Grateful that everybody could join us. We got a few viewers on our first real live show, but this is episode 2. And join us again next week for BuiltOnAir podcast. And we will have more fun segments and fun episode to join us. And we'd love to get your feedback, and feel free to subscribe to our channels. And we will see you next week. In the meantime, good luck with your Airtable implementations, and we'd love to see what you've built on Air.
Bye. See you next week.
Bye. Thank you for joining today's episode. We hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to check out our sponsor, ontoair.com, and we will see you next time on the BuiltOnAir podcast.